Welcome to WTF, the only askreddit channel that will blow your mind. Like and subscribe right now to support Pepe's career as an independent musician. Askreddit. What was your don't tell your mother moment with your dad? When I was about 7, my mum bought a cheap blender for the kitchen. It was one of those ones where the blending thingy points downward. You have to insert the jug from the front, and it's designed in such a way that you can basically put any old cup in there and it will still work. Mum was very strict in that we were not allowed to use just any cup. We had to use the special blended jug. Dad hated that thing because it was a pain to clean. Soon, the day came when mum was out and I asked my dad if I could make a milkshake. He chucked all the ingredients straight into the milkshake cup and stuck that into the blender. I, being a bit of a snot, reminded him that we had to use the special jug because mum said so. Dad replied that well, Dad can do it this way because Dad said so, then promptly turned the blender on and sent milk, chocolate, banana, and ice cream splattering all over the kitchen ceiling. That's the most dad story I've ever heard. Reminds me of the time where my dad woke me up in the morning and said, "Ham exploded. Clean it up before anyone gets back," and then just left the house. He had been boiling down a ham bone from the dinner the night before in order to make broth, and a layer of fat sealed off the lid. Pressure built up till fat spewed everywhere. It had gotten into the electronics of the oven, so that the timer was making this high-pitched squealing sound of agony that went on for 2 hours until the circuits in the clock finally fried. The stepmom was luckily on an all-day trip out with some friends, so I could clean things up well enough. My dad was teaching me how to skate in our apartment's parking lot, and me, being the overly confident 9-year-old, thought it would be great to skate down the lot's steepest hill. Dad encouraged, child approved. So I took the hill and I ate shit hard. Landed straight on my elbows and knees. Now, my dad didn't believe in elbow and knee pads, and nor do I to this day because I'm stupid, but let me tell you, I was scuffed up pretty bad. Now here's context. 4 years after watching her daughter and husband get hurt by dumb shit, my mom hated any sign of what we called fun. After rough checking for broken bones, I got out of my state of shock and started to weep softly at my bloody arms and legs. My dad thought I was okay to walk, so we slowly walk upstairs to our apartment and my dad sits me on the steps. In slight horror and mass confusion, I watched this man take the blood off my elbows and knees and wipe it on my face. Think Sylvester Stallone football player MVP style. Only thing it took to shut me up and never tell my mom was that I was a warrior. And warriors don't tell mom. So I never told mom. TLDR, my dad wiped my face with my own blood to keep me from squealing. This story is awesome on so many levels. With your permission, may I use the best dad line I have ever heard of with my own daughters in the course of our adventures? Obviously, the blood was a bonus, but warriors don't tell mom is goddamn genius. Your dad rules. Your dad is ducking metal as hell. This one deserves to be at the top. I'm crying laughing. You sound like a tough girl. Back when I was at school, I had a habit of lashing out at people who picked on me. Good for avoiding bullying after a few times. Bad for having friends and not being called a psycho. Older boy came up behind me and poured a drink on my head. I responded by turning around and punching him repeatedly in the face. Devolved into usual schoolboy scuffling until he ran off after seeing a teacher coming. I got into trouble as he definitely got the worst of it, but got off the hook as he was older and had a history of bullying. Ended up just being sent home to my parents. My mum was at work and my dad was working from home, so he took the call and met me coming in. I was terrified what would happen. The times I'd fought before that, my mum had come down on me hard as she was the strict one, but the only conversation was, "Did you start it? No. Did you finish it? Yes. Did he deserve it? Yes. Let's go watch TV. Don't tell mum." Love that man. The only time I ever got in trouble in high school was when my dad took my car, SUV, to the store the night before and left a case of beer in the trunk. Security guard saw it in the parking lot the next day and I got busted for alcohol on school grounds because the school automatically assumed I was trying to distribute it. My school had a bullshit zero tolerance policy, so I still ended up having to do some ridiculous little punishment. But one of my favorite memories is my dad shouting at the principal, "It's obviously my beer. He's 16. What the hell would he be doing with $60 a case imported Czech beer?" I love it when dads have your back against the school administration. That's a good father right there. Cheers to him. The few times I got into a fight, my mom caught wind of it first and would raise Cain. Dad would come into my room afterwards and have that talk of the circumstances in which the fight took place. Most of the time, and I'd tell the story honestly out of fear, he would tell me I was in the right. When I have kids, I'm going to teach them how to defend themselves, not to provoke others. That way if someone else starts a fight, my kids would finish it. This zero tolerance policy shit punishes both kids. Might as well go out with a bang. Growing up, my parents worked one full-time job and 2 to 3 part-time jobs to make ends meet. When I was 6 or 7, my mom had just had a tough week. She had been fired from one of her jobs. Her brother called and asked for money again, meth addict, and she was just not doing well. When she was at her last job of the day, my dad is trying to make her something special for dinner. Bless his heart, he's so bad at cooking. He realizes he can't finish without some ingredient, and he didn't take the time to put me in my car seat and take me through the store. So he leaves me on the couch with a book and a promise not to move. Then he rushes to the store, and while he's rushing back, he gets pulled over and gets a speeding ticket. He told me not to tell mom, and I guess paid it all off with part of his checks and just told my mom he hadn't worked as much. TLDR, my dad got a speeding ticket trying to do something nice for my mom. Did the special dinner turn out okay? Throughout my teens, my dad and I would go rock climbing together a few times a month. Mum was very much a non-climber and tolerated it in a don't ask, don't tell kind of way. As you can imagine, this state of affairs threw up more don't tell your mother scenarios than either of us would care to admit. So we are out for a jolly one weekend in May, probably 2005-2006, and my little sister is tagging along. She's under 10 at the time, but keen enough that she has a good time scrambling around with us. Dad, being a bit of maverick and an adventurous soul, takes us both out a stretch of coast locally known for its culm rock, a kind of friable slate that generally crumbles on contact. Anyway, we are climbing happily together for a sunny and peaceful afternoon when my sister starts getting a bit bored and wants to play in the rock pools instead. No problem. Dad and I can get one last route done, then we'll all go to the chippy. Bless. Only Dad totally misjudged the tide timetable and the daylight hours, resulting in my sister being stranded on a boulder, surrounded by a deepening sea, and bawling her eyes out, whilst he and I attempted to reach her ever more desperately by abseil. Then it got dark. Finally, Dad decided to pitch himself into the sea, grab my sister and swim/wade to shore, leaving me dangling on the ab rope waiting for him to scramble back to me and arrange an alpine style ridge scramble along an arete with the consistency of extra mature cheddar cheese. All in all, it was a pretty typical outing and one of many similar adventures we still climb together whenever we can. And he's still a total liability with an uncanny instinct for survival against all the odds. I was 22, had just graduated college, and was living at home while starting my first real job. Being single, childless, and living at home, my living expenses were minimal, and I saved a fair bit of money pretty quickly. I wanted to do something exciting, but didn't know what. I'm not the backpack across Europe type, and I come from a rather bland family. A co-worker told me I should buy a motorcycle, but I knew my mom would never approve of it. So I waited until my parents were out of town one week and bought a used Honda CBR 250. My mom hated it. Now that I'm married with kids, she says it's irresponsible of me to ride such a statistically dangerous vehicle. My dad, however, had always wanted one in his younger years, but never done anything about it. He approved. One weekend not long after, my mom went on an out-of-town shopping trip with my sisters. My dad asked if I wanted to go do anything. I thought for a moment and asked him if he wanted to learn how to ride a motorcycle. He got this silly/excited grin that I'd never seen before. And that, dear Edit, is how my then 60-year-old dad learned how to ride a motorcycle. Awesome. My first bike was an old CBR 250. Wicked bikes. After I got my rider's license a few years ago, my friend decided she wanted to ride too. So even though both her parents tried to talk and order her out of doing it, she got a bike anyway. A few months later, seeing how badass his daughter looked, her dad got his license and now rides pretty much every day and all weekend. Her mum has also gotten a bike too now. Unfortunately, my parents, and so all, still disapprove of my beautiful Daytona. Ain't giving it up though. That's a good son right there. Plus that bike is so easy to learn on. Good shit, man. Ride safe. I get this. I've grown up racing those gas-powered RC cars. When I was working a real job, I did a few seasons of open wheel. My dad didn't seem to care, but my mom hated it. I was in a pretty gnarly crash a few years ago and called my open wheel days quits. I bought an RX-7 as a project car. It's usually a part for the winter and drivable over the summer. My mom went to visit some friends for a week and my dad for the first time ever asked if he could drive it. In 26 years I had never seen him drive standard and was a little unsure how it would go. So I jump in the passenger seat with him as he whips it with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. We get home and he says, "Haven't driven like that since I drove my old man's Gran Torino, thanks." I was 29 when I learned to ride a motorcycle. I'd always thought they were cool, but never imagined getting one of my own. After a childhood mentor who often tried to get me to ride on the back of his bike passed away, cancer, it was my homage to him to take the MSF course. It's never too late to learn, and you did an awesome thing. I wish I had gold to give you. Used to drive me to my flute lessons across town every Wednesday evening. On our way back home every week, we'd stop at Baskin Robbins, and he'd let me get a double scoop in a waffle cone, and we'd sit inside, take our time, and talk. It was a really special thing, since both my parents worked 2 jobs, and had to chauffeur around 2 high school age kids to various functions/activities. Getting to spend one-on-one time with either of my parents was a rare and fortunate thing. The thing was, they both worked 2 jobs, because we weren't that well off. So weekly stops at Baskin Robbins was a splurge thing and I wasn't to tell my mom or my brother about it. Schedules flipped around about a year later, and my mom was the one to take me to flute lessons, and she'd always get good junk food from the gas station. Easy cheese and wheat thins or potato wedges, and we'd eat in the car and talk. Neither parent knew the other spoiled me on Wednesdays. Your parents knew. That's why they both did it. They enjoyed the time as much as you. AWW. They both knew. And they both had something they did with your brother too that likely cost about the same amount. When, after several hours of failure and frustration, and having to send me to bed halfway through the setup, my dad sneaking upstairs to wake 11-year-old me up just after midnight with a simple phrase, "I got the new PlayStation working. Come and have a go, but shush, your mum is in bed." First game we booted up was Alien Trilogy. Those graphics, man. Duck, yeah, Alien Trilogy was my first PS1 game. Creepy as duck and still awesome to this day. You just brought a tear to my eye reminding me of playing Tomb Raider with my dad. My dad is a great dude. When I was 13, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring was being released. There are really no words to describe how excited I was for this film, and I begged my parents to take me to the midnight showing. It turned out that I had some sort of standardized testing the next day, so it was out of the question. I remember my dad making a big deal out of how everyone had to go to bed early so I could be well rested for my test. I was furious, lying there wondering what the movie would be like. Slowly I slipped into my own dreams of Middle-earth. Suddenly, I was shaken awake. Mom's asleep. I've got the tickets. Let's go. Quietly. Best night of my life. I did fine on my exam. I still made it to a good college and got a real job and all that. I don't know if my mom figured it out, but at that point my parents were often sleeping in separate rooms, so it is possible we got away with it. When I was 13, I did fine on my exam. I still made it to a good college and got a real job and all that. No shit. Thanks for tuning in for this WTF Red episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the one and only askreddit channel that will blow your mind every time.